I'm here with Jay April. Hey Jay, how's it going, man?
It's going pretty good, Dave.
Hey, thanks for coming out and doing an interview with us, man.
Oh, my pleasure. It's always good to talk to the community producers here at Akaku and people out there in our studio audience and in our sitting there at home in the living room. It's great. It's great to be here and talk. What's on your mind?
So where did Jay April come from? What's he?
Well, I was actually hatched from an egg, you know. No.
Like Mork?
You're kind of like Mork. Been accused of that. No, I come from the East Coast. I grew up in New England, in Connecticut, and right halfway between New York and Boston. So a lot of my childhood was spent going back and forth between those two great cultural centers. And I went to school in Boston, but spent a lot of time in New York. So I was always kind of schizophrenic whether to root for the Yankees or the Red Sox. So I became a Red Sox fan.
Oh, it could be pretty dangerous territory. Anyway, back to Maui.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do here on Maui now?
Well, I spend most of my time here at Akaku. As you know, I'm the president and CEO of Akaku, which means doesn't mean much other than the fact that I keep our doors open and try to keep the three-wing circus going. I mean, this is an amazing opportunity to be having the privilege to run our island's community TV station. I mean, all walks of life come in here. As you know, you spend a lot of time here as a volunteer, and I want to congratulate you for that. I mean, you are one of our more prolific volunteers. You've come here, you've learned how to make shows, you learned how to edit, you help other people, and that's what it's all about. Anybody can walk in our doors and learn how to be literate in video, learn how to shoot, learn how to edit, learn how to tell stories, and learn how to help other people tell stories. And that's what we're about. We're about helping each other to tell our stories. If you thought of television stations as buildings,
Mm-hmm.
if CBS is a building, if NBC is a building, if MTV is a building, CNN is a building. You know, we were talking about New York. You know, New York has all these buildings. But in the middle of New York City, there's Central Park, this beautiful green park. And that park is for the people. So if television stations were buildings, this is the park. This is the electronic city park where people can come and say and do whatever they please. And most of the time, they do good things. Occasionally, you know, somebody might pee in the bushes in the park, but that doesn't happen very often. But most of the time, this is a place where we can talk to each other, and it's so important. It's such an important part of our democracy that it's not based on money, it's not based on ratings, it's not based on anything that's especially slick or commercial. It's based on the ability for people to come to this park and communicate with one another and learn how to do that. So it's an exciting opportunity to be at the helm of that operation and to strive every day to make it better, you know, to get more abundance, more money, more support from our politicians and from the cable company, and also transfer into the new world of the internet, because that's where everything's going. You know, eventually everything that we see on television will also be on the internet and vice versa. Everything is going to go onto that one wire, right, or that one over-the-air, or WiMAX, or whatever they're going to call it, and it's going to change. But our ability to talk to each other isn't going to change. We're always going to need each other. We're always going to need a forum by which to express ourselves. And this is really the only form of television that lets people do that. You can't walk into Channel 2 or Channel 4 or Channel 8 or even PBS, public television, and get on the air. But in Akaku you can, and that's a very special privilege that we have.
I really appreciate that privilege too. You know, you guys are always here for me if I come down when you guys are open and whatnot, and everything's good. But I know also that you did a little bit of filmmaking, directing, mm-hmm. editing.
Yeah.
Do you have a couple of pieces that you've done?
Well, quite a few. You know, when I was a little kid, I started making puppet shows for people. Mm-hmm. You know, basically socks, and you put eyes on them, and you know, I was always entertaining people with puppets and Viewmasters. I don't know if you remember Viewmasters. And I was always interested in media and theater and that kind of thing. And then I think it was 1975, I saw a portable video camera made by Sony. It was called a Portapak. It was a little black and white camera that was connected to this big hose or big wire that went to this big box that had these reels in it. And you could get a half an hour of black and white, very poor quality television on this machine. And I heard that there were these kinds of machines, and I actually drove down to New York City to buy one because they didn't have camcorders then. And I hooked up with some people called the Video Freaks in upstate New York. They looked a lot like you. They had beard, long hair, you know. And they didn't like what they saw on the 3 networks. There wasn't any cable then. And so they put a transmitter on the rooftop of their farmhouse in Woodstock, New York, and they transmitted into the valley, into the little town of Woodstock. And they put the machine, the cable, excuse me, the video recorder into this baby carriage. You know, there's old kind of baby carriages with the shock absorbers on them.
Yeah.
And they'd go through the town and talk to everybody. And then every night they'd put a show on at midnight called the Night Owl Show, where they would play back people's interviews. And it was fantastic. It was real people's TV. I'd never seen anything like that before. All the television I had ever seen growing up with was with, you know, people that looked like mannequins with perfect parts in their hair telling me what to think. It would always bother me that I'm watching the news, and instead of seeing what's going on and there's a person standing there with a microphone, I'm trying to look around him, right, to see, you know, what's going on out there, you know. And so what also was fascinating about this sort of people's TV was that they weren't selling soap. They weren't asking me to buy anything. You know, it was real TV. And that kind of inspired me. So I got one of these Portapacks and I started doing little documentaries. I worked on the first big project I worked on was a documentary against the proliferation of nuclear power plants. That was back in 1976 or 77 in Seabrook, New Hampshire. And back then, nuclear power was very popular. The energy industry was saying things like, nuclear power is going to be too cheap to meter. We're going to all have electricity, it's going to be virtually free, and nuclear power is the way to go. And then, of course, Chernobyl happened, and 3 Mile Island happened, and people realized the dangers of radiation and the difficulty in getting rid of nuclear waste and that sort of thing. And it turned out a lot of these video activists that were out with portable video cameras talking about this issue were right. The issue didn't make it onto CBS or NBC or any of those other places until after these video activists were able to jumpstart that story. The videotapes were sent to Europe, to Germany, to France, and started, I believe, a worldwide anti-nuclear movement. So I also understood in those days that you could use video for social change. You could use video for good, that you didn't always have to use it to sell soap. And after that, I became very much involved in public access and cable and building stations like this one, giving people access to cable. I worked for the cable industry for a while. I started a network called E! Entertainment Television, which is huge now. I worked for CNN as an environmental correspondent. Always had a small camera. Always did like the interviews from behind the camera, kind of like what a lot of people here do at Akaku. Was very successful in just getting real with TV. It's real easy to get real, and anyone who's been behind a camcorder, or now an iPod or a flip, knows how being real is the most honest, most important thing. People want to watch it when you're being real. If you're trying to be fake or you're trying to copy somebody else, that's what it looks like. But if you're trying to be real with the camera, and you try to like maybe ask the questions that everyone else is thinking but are afraid to ask. Right. And you sort of, all you really have to do is point the thing and go, wow, look at that. Wow, do you see what I'm seeing? You know, what I see is what you get basically when I shoot video. I don't try in most cases to predetermine what the story is going to be. You do predetermine what it's going to be when you're doing a commercial or you're doing a play or a drama or something that has a tight format. I like the run and gun, let's see what's going to happen today kind of style. I think it's more unpredictable, and you know, personally I have a YouTube site, Japril1, J-A-P-R-L-1, YouTube, you know, youtube.com. There's about 140 videos that I put up over the past, I don't think I've even posted a video in the last year or two. But what's fascinating is I didn't do any of that stuff for money. I put it up there just to see, you know, how people would react. And I have like probably 4 million hits. I got thousands and thousands of comments. And it's really kind of interesting what people have to say.